Emotions, regulating the waves. In the previous clip, we learned about the nature of our emotions and how we all experience them as humans. Hopefully, with your practice using a mood meter, you were able to observe various different emotions during different days and during different times of the day. Perhaps some of the emotional experiences you noticed were more muted and others more intense. When we are undergoing intense emotional experiences, it's difficult to engage with the growth part of the brain. However, as I described previously, a regular mindfulness practice can help to regulate intense emotions and connect with the growth mindset. This is one way to regulate emotions over time. In this lesson, I want to share with you more ways in which we can regulate our emotions when we're experiencing them intensely so that we have more opportunities to connect to growth mindset and respond with purpose and compassion even during challenging moments in our lives. So here we go. But before we begin our discussion on regulating emotions, I wanted to reinforce these points, which hopefully you were able to gather with your mood meter exercise. It's that all emotions are impermanent and that we are not our emotions. While we can rest in the fact that emotions, no matter how strong they are impermanent, we can, at the same time, develop ways to regulate these emotions, especially in times of challenges, so that we can surf the waves with more ease. So, let's first find out what you do currently. How do you respond to unpleasant feelings? At this point, I invite you to get a piece of paper and a pen. Now I'm going to ask you to follow some steps and see what you can come up with. If you have other people with you, you might do this exercise with them. So first, come up with a typical situation that produces distress or stress, like having problem with parents or having an inability to do something well. Second, decide on a good hypothetical situation and identify the underlying uncomfortable feelings like anger, fear, worry, and so on. And 3, select one or two of the main uncomfortable feelings and print them on the top of your notebook. And step 4, list ways that you avoid or try to cover up the uncomfortable feelings. Be very specific, like checking Instagram. So pause the video so you can have plenty of time to engage in this exercise. So what are some ways in which you cover up your uncomfortable feelings? Sleeping, watching TV, playing video games, going out with friends, drinking, complaining? Now take time now to ask yourself, does a cover-up work? Why or why not? Is there a cost attached to the cover-up? What are the problems that can arise from covering up these feelings? So often, we tend to want to push our emotions away or cover them up when they don't feel good. But you might notice that some methods of covering up your emotions can bring up further problems. The different ways of responding to unpleasant emotions can be mapped out on a scale. On one end is suppression, which includes procrastination and distraction. These are ways to kill the emotion as much as possible because it doesn't feel good. Some of the ways you might have come up with as to how you might cover up your feelings would fit here. Then on the other end is entanglement, which includes rumination. It's getting caught up and being consumed in the emotional experiences. Ruminating thoughts can further reinforce the emotions and keep us in the thoughts-emotions loop. Do you recognize yourself in either one of these patterns? What might be some issues with these methods? For suppression, this may be a temporary tactic which could lead these emotions to come back as soon as we disengage from the activities to distract us. But also, if you're experiencing intense emotions from challenges, wouldn't it be more effective to work with the challenges if you could understand more clearly the emotional experiences you're having? For example, if you're feeling really bad, then understanding if the bad is a tired bad or sad bad will give more information as to how you might respond. Well, this requires that we accept our emotions rather than suppress our emotions. On the other hand, entanglement is unhealthy because we can stay consumed by the unpleasant emotions longer than necessary. This might keep us in a survival mode and might make it harder for us to rise to the growth mode to find ways to move forward with purpose and compassion. So, what does a healthy middle ground look like? The healthy middle ground is about applying mindfulness when working with emotions. First, it's important for us to recognize that our emotions are what show up as part of our human experiences and that we accept these emotions, whatever they are. So, for example, imagine that you have a test tomorrow that's worth 40% of your grade and it's 10 p.m. the night before and you haven't started studying for the test yet. How would you feel? Maybe your heart might be racing and you might feel tightness in your chest. Your head might feel light and scattered. When these sensations show up, rather than saying to yourself, I shouldn't feel stressed and scared, it's good to just pause and let yourself feel that. And for some of you, you might even put your hand on your chest and you can say to yourself, wow, I'm feeling stressed and nervous and scared. It's okay. I'm feeling these because I'm human. I don't have control over these feelings, but I have control over how I respond to these feelings. This is acceptance. Start by accepting your emotional experiences. Now, we know we cannot control the emotions that show up in our lives, but we can regulate our emotions. Regulating our emotions is about taking charge of how we respond to the emotions that show up so that the emotions become less intense. Regulating our emotion is very important because, as I described in the previous slides, if the amygdala is overactive, then the signaling connection to the prefrontal cortex that allows us to respond to situations with growth mindset and purpose can be severed, which leaves us in a survival state. So, when you face situations that bring up strong emotions within you, what are some ways to regulate our emotions in the moment? Well, there are multiple emotional regulation opportunities. To describe these emotional regulation methods, let me use my own experiences of when I needed an emotional regulation lately. So, as I'm creating this slideshow, I'm on maternity leave as I gave birth to my baby a few months ago. Since I've been staying home with my baby, I've been checking my Facebook account a lot whenever I felt idle at home. What I noticed, however, is that the more I checked Facebook, I was feeling more anxious and the stories that I was generating was, wow, there are many people doing amazing things in their profession and I'm doing nothing at home. Or I'm getting left behind while others are making professional leaps. Or wow, this person is so well connected and I have very little professional connections. The anxiety and stress that I felt from the situation was really strong. So as you can see, there are 4 different points in the timeline where emotions can be regulated: situation, attention, appraisal, and response. I'll come back to the situation later and we'll share from attention. This is moving out of the story of the emotion and connecting with our moment-to-moment experience. So in my scenario, what I could do is as I check Facebook and notice the strong emotions of anxiety and stress bubbling up inside me, to bring my attention to an anchor like my breath or parts of my body. This helps me to not be consumed by my emotional experience and notice that the thoughts that are generating my emotional response are simply stories that I'm creating in my head. When we can bring our awareness to our present moment, oftentimes we can notice that our emotional experience is part of the experiences we are having, but that we are not our emotions. I like doing a quick body scan because when I do, although the emotional experience might demand a lot of my attention, I notice that many parts of my body feel quite alright, and I am not my emotion. Now, another opportunity for me to regulate my emotion is in the appraisal. This is to shift the story that I might be having about the situation to regulate my emotional experiences. So with my Facebook example, I can replace, wow, there are many people doing amazing things in their profession and I'm doing nothing at home with, My current profession has shifted to raising a baby, and this is a very important profession because my family is very important to me. Or raising a healthy child means that there's a better chance for me to go back to work that I love, so this work is important. The story of, wow, this person is so well connected and I have very little professional connections can be shifted to, I will start building my professional connections when I'm ready. And at the moment, I can reach out to one person a day to maintain the connections I currently have. When we are shifting our stories, this is a good opportunity to identify the self-judgment that you might be having, like I should or shouldn't thoughts, and break it down to identify your need or what's important to you so you can generate thoughts that is about how to develop or build on what's important for you. So for me, connections are important, so my thoughts have been shifted to how to build that in a way that is achievable. Then comes the emotional regulation opportunity in the form of response. This is about applying strategies to influence the physiological or experiential conditions once the emotion has fully arisen. So for me, I've always had a tendency to sit in one spot and ruminate over the thoughts and get entangled in my thoughts emotions loop. I would then share my thoughts with my husband and verbalize them, which compounded my thoughts even further. When I notice anxiety or stress bubbling up after checking Facebook, I could instead choose to move my body, like take a walk or do yoga to shake myself out of the loop, or do something that reliably makes me feel good, like cooking or listening to a good podcast. Finally, there is an opportunity to regulate emotions by either selecting a situation or modifying a situation. Selecting the situation is avoiding the situation that generates a particular emotional response. On the other hand, modifying a situation is changing the situation slightly so that the emotional response is not as severe. So for my example, selecting a situation is like deleting my Facebook app from my phone altogether so that I stop checking Facebook. By not checking Facebook, I don't see what others are up to, and this will prevent me from having the emotional response. In terms of modifying a situation, I could still check Facebook, but I can change the feeding setting so that the stories that show up on my wall are ones that don't trigger the emotional response. Selecting a situation and modifying a situation can be effective to prevent an emotion from showing up, but it's important to ask yourself if facing the situation is important to develop your need or what's important for you. It also may not build your resilience to emotions of discomfort, so in the long term, choosing this method all the time might not help to build you as a person. So, which emotion regulation method did I choose in the end? Well, I tried a few different methods, but in the end, I decided to delete my Facebook app from my phone. I realized that the cost of checking Facebook was larger than the benefit, which was maintaining connection. Connection is still important for me, but I decided that I can still choose to connect with others through Messenger, and for now, what I needed was a break from the stories that was consistently triggering strong emotions of discomfort. I missed Facebook for the first week simply because it was a habit, and I missed being distracted. But after this brief withdrawal period, I've actually hardly thought about it. So this action worked. In summary, when we face challenges and intense emotions show up, there are ways to regulate our emotions rather than suppressing these emotions or getting entangled by them. We can work on regulating intense emotions over time with a regular mindfulness practice. But also, while we face situations that bring up intense emotions, we have multiple opportunities to regulate our emotions. These include selecting or modifying our situations, focusing our attention purposefully, shifting the story we create, and modulating our response to the intense emotions that show up. It is important that before engaging in any of these emotional regulation methods that we fully accept our emotions as they are. By regulating our emotions, we have better opportunities to connect with the growth part of the brain and respond to challenges with purpose, connecting with what's really important. Our practice this week will be about applying these emotional regulation methods in your life.